Hello and welcome to Two Crime Writers and a Microphone. We're your hosts Luca Veste
and I'm Steve Cavanagh,
and we're here to present a brand new podcast which will bring you the latest news in the book world, interviews with writers, agents, publicists, editors, you name them, we'll have them. Also, each week we'll hear from some of the best book reviewers around who will give us a reads of the week. This week we're joined by Tracy Fenton of The Book Club on Facebook and also the amazing Stuart Neville. So, Steve, how have you been this week?
I'm good. I'm fine. I'm sort of getting over a bit of a cold, but I'm okay.
Same here. I had the flu jab a couple of weeks ago, and I've been nothing but ill since.
That's not good for you, getting those jabs.
Those jabs, honestly, I don't get ill at all. And then all of a sudden I've had this flu jab for the first time. I've never had it before. And I've been ill twice in the space of like 2.5 weeks. And it's been, debilitating. Well, not debilitating, obviously. I can still walk around. And I was still smoking, which is not like, that can't be that bad, sure. But no, I was coughing a lot, and it was not good at all. But I seem to be getting over it a bit now. If you hear me coughing or spluttering, it's not me, it's Steve, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Exactly, that's right. It's all my fault. But I think the flu jab gives you like a very mild flu, doesn't it? And then you get over it quite quickly. I think maybe it doesn't do that. I don't know.
Well,
that could be a myth.
I think it kind of gives you something. And then your body fights it, and then you supposedly are immune to getting the proper full blown flu. But my body just doesn't like anything invading it. It's just like it's had this flu jab and it's gone, hang on, what's this? And just started battling against me entire soul. It's just
I know there's things that my body can't take. Orange juice, I can't do pure orange juice. Doesn't agree with my body at all. I had it once on holiday when I was a wee lad. I'm from Belfast. We don't have oranges, much less freshly squeezed oranges. It was holiday Isle of Man. I was about 7, and I had pure orange, and I spent most of the rest of the holiday in the toilet. And even now, I still can't have it at all. My body just rejects it automatically. It's got far too many vitamins in it or something. My body just goes, oh my god, no, get rid of that quick. So this is the health part of the show.
Yeah.
This our new health section, health and lifestyle.
Health section. We this week we've dealt with flu jabs, don't get them, and orange juice, don't include them in your 1 or 5 a day.
Nope.
No, that's health news for this week. Next week.
Next week it's curtains and cushions.
Yes.
What floral patterns you should get your crime writer in your life.
Well, in news this week, first we'll talk about the Man Booker Prize. This was awarded this week. This week our time anyway, and this was awarded to Paul Beattie for The Sellout. The Sellout, which is a great name for a book that's won an award, isn't it? Really,
it is. He didn't sell out that much.
No, I mean, Paul has become the first American writer to win the Man Booker Prize. His book has been described as a caustic satire on US racial politics, and judges said it put him up there with Mark Twain and Jonathan Swift, which is no light praise at all. It's a laugh-out-loud novel whose main character wants to assert his African-American identity by outrageously and transgressively bringing back slavery and segregation. That sounds very interesting. Also
sounds fascinating.
Fascinating, yeah. The book beat out Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh, Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Thien, All That Man Is by David Slay, His Bloody Project by Graham McCrae Burnett, and Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. I think we'll talk about this because I know we have a bit of a disagreement on this, but I was kind of rooting for Graham McCrae Burnett because his book has been described as a crime novel. I haven't read it myself, but it's always good to hear that, crime novels are kind of insidiously inserting themselves into the literary genre prizes. I know Marlon James last year, his book that won the Booker Prize was described as a crime novel. But I haven't read them, but I would love it to be the case that this is a crime novel.
Well, you see, Graham kind of disagrees, rather strangely. There was an interview I think it's on the Man Booker website, where I think they interview all the shortlisted authors, and Graham was saying, well, this is not a crime novel, it's a novel with a crime in it. And I think there's maybe an effort by Graham or somebody to sort of distance themselves from from falling into the crime genre. Now, I have to say, I do know a few authors who know Graham and say he's an absolutely lovely guy, and there's no doubt about that, but he doesn't want to describe his book as a crime novel.
But see, now I don't understand this idea that it's not a crime novel, but it's a novel with a crime. That's still a crime novel.
Yes, it kind of is.
Because a crime novel without a crime in it isn't a crime novel.
Well, that's true.
Although, I mean, it'd be like someone saying this is not a sci-fi novel. This is a novel with science fiction in it. I'd still class that as a sci-fi novel.
We see that's a whole different argument because with sci-fi, publishers have rather sneakily discovered that women and young girls don't read sci-fi. But if you describe a sci-fi novel as a dystopian novel, they're very happy to read that for some reason. But it's exactly the same thing. It's science fiction. But it's just if you put it in the science fiction section, they won't read it. If it's a dystopian novel, they will read it. So I'm not sure how much any of that helps anybody really. I suppose it's just for selling books and where they go on the shelf.
I think that's it.
But I think
it just helps bookshops, doesn't it, to shelve their books?
It does, I think. But in Graham's case, in that interview on the website, he sort of talks about books that he's enjoyed and books that sort of influenced him, and he talks about George Simenon and who wrote the sort of Maigret books, and there's a bit that sort of gives it where he describes the Maigret books and enjoying the elements, and he says Simenon was much more than a crime novelist. Oh. When he talks about all these other books that Simenon wrote which focus on character.
No, dude.
And it's just, I think
focus on character.
Yeah.
So he's not just a crime novelist because he concentrates on character.
Yeah. He's more than a crime novelist, I think he says. Which is not, I think Graham's maybe hasn't read a lot of crime novels, to be honest. I think that's all it is. I don't think it's intent to be disrespectful to the genre. I just don't think he's read as widely or as deeply, because it's like any genre. There are books which don't have great characters or great stories in them. They're in the crime genre, same in any genre. But of course, the books that, for example, Ian Rankin, Mark Billingham, Lee Child, these sorts of writers write fantastic characters, and people go back to their books for the characters. Crime fiction, and especially series crime fiction, is all about character.
Well, exactly, especially series. I mean, people keep coming back to Rebus for a reason. They love the character. They keep coming back to Thorn with Mark Billingham's books because of the character. It's not something that is unknown to us as crime writers, that character is of utmost importance. It's a shame because I've heard only nice things about him, and I was pulling for him to win the Booker. So obviously he's just had a bad day.
Obviously he is, or there's a certain aspect of, I think, if you've written a crime novel and it's been either when a literary writer writes a crime novel, it ceases to be a crime novel. It's a literary novel with a crime in it. So if Martin Amis writes a crime novel, it's not a crime novel. Although I think in that case he wrote a book called, I think it's Night Train, which I got about 7 pages in, and then I thought, you know what? It's not a crime novel at all. And I did put it down. But no disrespect to Martin Amis. He'd hardly be crying into his Weetabix if I didn't like his book. But I don't think Graham meant any disrespect or anything like that. I guess maybe he's just not as au fait with the genre. But, he should just relax. We're all very nice. And the good thing is, if you are a crime novelist, you sell more books.
Well, I mean, he is the one who has sold the most books as well.
He has, yeah. That's because it's a crime novel.
Exactly. I think he outsold everyone on the shortlist. Before the prize was announced, I think he'd outsold them by many, many, many thousands. I know that once Paul Beatty's book won, they they ordered a new print run to go. I think it was like 150,000 copies were ordered, which is that's ambitious. It'll be interesting to see if it happens. I mean, I think it will. The Man Booker Prize winners usually do well.
They do.
I know Marlon James's book last year did really well after that, after the win especially. But I mean, for Graham's publisher, it's brilliant because they're Saraband and they're only a small publisher.
Yeah, but and interestingly, they have his book listed as a crime novel, alongside some other very good crime novelists. There's one I'm reading at the moment, actually, amongst other books. I'm reading a guy called Neil Broadfoot, who's a friend of ours, and his latest one's called All the Devils, which is fantastic. It's really, really good, and it's great characters. And there's a report. It starts off a reporter, Doug, who's the series character for Neil, and the book starts off with Doug thinking he's beaten someone up, and then very quickly he learns that this person has died. And it's a really visceral, arresting opening to a book. It's great. So I'm really pleased for Saraband, who are going to do well out of Graham, but they already have a stable of fantastic crime novelists. So hope it does great for them.
That sounds interesting. I can't wait to sign the Neil's book now. Neil, I don't really know other than on a football field. I've played him, I think, 3 or 4 times now in the England versus Scotland crime writers match up in Stirling for the bloody Scotland Festival. I
don't think Neil would mind me saying this, but he's a better writer than he is a footballer.
Well, to be fair,
but then again,
for the first couple of years, all the Scottish writers were better footballers than anyone. So but this year we brought it back a little bit. But so I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy for anyone who wins a prize. I'm not really interested in it though, mainly because I wasn't nominated for it. And I'm a bit annoyed really, with all these crime novels being on the shortlist and winning the thing. We should be on these shortlists more often.
Nobody's ever going to put us on the shortlist with a book, and nobody's going to even enter our book.
That's just, I think it's wrong. Who can we talk to get this rectified?
Well, you see, here's the thing, and Adrian McKinty, who we've talked about in the show before, wrote a brilliant blog about this, and basically with big publishers, they enter books for the Booker that are similar to books that have previously won the Booker. So, the likes of a crime novel wouldn't even enter their heads to be entered into the Booker. They just wouldn't go near it. They want something where, they want a book where they have a tortured character who goes through emotional hell and nothing really happens. That's the sort of books that they like.
Ladies and gentlemen, is literary fiction.
But the shortlist this year sounded a lot more exciting than previous shortlists. And I don't think there's a bad book there. I think they're all good.
Unless they've just got really good at writing blurbs now.
Yeah,
we start reading and going, hang on a minute. I don't think that's what's happened here, though. I do implore people to check these books out, mainly so I don't have to, so you can just tell me what you think of them, and then I'll decide if I want to read them myself. I'm very lazy in that way. Next, we're going to discuss something that kind of went a little bit viral in the writing world a week or so ago. A lot of people were discussing it online. A lot of people had very strong views about it. And this is a piece from John Banville, who also writes under the name Benjamin Black with his crime fiction, but under John Banville he writes literary fiction. He did an interview for the Irish Times. He's releasing a memoir, as it happens. And he was asked, I'm going to just read from the interview. It says, under the heading Family Life, it says, the impact on his family's life can only be guessed at. He needs no nudge from this interviewer to say so. It was very hard on them, very hard on the people around me, on my children. I have not been a good father. I don't think any writer is, Banville says. You take so much and suck up so much of the oxygen that it's very hard on one's loved ones. I've been very lucky that my loved ones put up with me and supported the project. I'm very fortunate. A hellish husband too? I think so, yeah. I wouldn't have been able to live with me. But would he have done anything differently? I don't think so, because it takes so much concentration, and we are cannibals. We'd always sell our children for a phrase. Now,
oh dear.
There's a lot to there's a lot to unpack in these statements. I mean,
yeah, okay, you go first.
I mean, the idea. First off, it's obvious bullshit. This idea that someone who's a writer can't be a good father. I think he is just trying to allay his own guilt here. Also, he'd probably be pissed off if someone with a Scouse accent is reading these words out. I don't know what he sounds like in real life, but I get that sense that he's one of those people who just lost any semblance of any accents as they grow older. Am I right?
He has. He used to have there's actually mentions in that piece. He says he used to have a Culchie accent, which is like an Irish regional accent from the countryside, and he was disgusted to find out that he did have one. But he sounds sort of very posh Dublin affluent Dublin sort of accent. So yeah.
Well, I'm not going to cast any aspersions on his character due to this, but I will say that people who lose their accents over time, really piss me off. Because it usually means that they never go from a Scouse accent to all of a sudden they're talking with a Manc one. That's not the case. It's always they go from one regional accent to an incredibly posh one, which always sounds to me like you're putting that on. It's not, that can't be right. It can't be. Anyway, that's getting off the point. The point is that it's obvious bullshit about a writer not being able to be a good parent, because he's obviously not just talking about fathers here, unless he's a complete tool. He's saying that any writer can't be a good parent. I know many writers. You've got kids. I've got kids. Our kids aren't, sitting upstairs wondering where we are now. They're in bed, but because we're good parents, and we wait until they go to bed before we do things like this. But I don't think writing is not what he wants it to be. Is to be this, closed off. No one knows what I'm going through. This idea that, it's not. It's something unique. It's something that normal people, the normies, civilians can't understand. It is in some ways a little bit like that. It's not to the detriment of your children and their relationship with their parents. It's not. It can't be. It's just a job like any other job. We may not be leaving the house and going down a coal mine. I mean, no one is these days. But it's the idea that, just because your job involves you sitting at a screen and making stuff up for a living, which is basically what being a writer is, and then banging your head against the wall when you can't think of anything to make up. It also can be just walked away from time to time, and that's possibly what his problem has been. Is that he hasn't been able to manage his time in such a way that he can still be a good father whilst being a writer. It does take up a lot of, brain power to do it. Some of us obviously have the ability to use their brains in certain ways. He's obviously can only focus on one thing at a time, is not able to, use his time more effectively, I would say. It's obvious bullshit. I hope, my unending hope is that the world in which we live today, in that the clickbait is key, in that to get people to be interested in what you have to say, you almost have to say something, stupid and ridiculous to get their attention first.
Yeah, I think that could be part of it. I mean, that was the headline, wasn't it? I'm a bad... What was the headline? I'm a bad writer. I'm a bad...
I have not been a good father, no writer is.
What was that, sorry?
I have not been a good father, no writer is.
Yeah. See, I even in that, I don't know if he explicitly means female writers there. I just don't think the concept of female writers has entered his head in that phrase at all. Just think he thinks writers men. But maybe I'm judging that unfairly. But
if we're gonna throw anything at him, let's throw that on him as well.
Well, fair enough. But I think with Banville, he likes to poke people a wee bit. He likes to say inflammatory things. And I mean, I don't know what he was like as a father. He certainly seems to think he wasn't, and he suffered for his art, and maybe his family suffered. But even the language in that interview, when he says he sucks the oxygen
Yeah.
What does it mean? Does he walk about with a big straw, sucking away? It's like, what is that? What's he talking about?
No,
I
I
think
think
he's
he probably walks into a room and sucks all the life of that room out of that room. All the life is gone, and he just assumes that's because he's a writer, rather than his personality is not something that's really endearing to people.
yes, I think he admits that in the interview that he admits he can be difficult at times. And that's how I don't know. I don't know about them. I think his interview and his comments were ill-judged, and quite a few people, I think, as you already mentioned, on Twitter said likewise. David Simon, who wrote The Wire, said, I can't remember exactly what it said. It involved the word "fucknut," which I think was good. That tells you everything you really need to know. And Steve Mosby and John Connolly and stuff were commenting on it and saying, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" Because I think people thought, well, there's some great response. People thought, well, I'm a writer and I'm a decent father, and Banville's response could well be, well, maybe, I wouldn't classify you as a writer because you're not suffering. And he has a very high-minded opinion of what he's doing. But basically, he's sitting in a room and telling a story. That's all you're doing. And if it shouldn't interfere with anything else. Shouldn't interfere with you watching EastEnders or the Great British Bake Off or something like that.
I'm still disappointed that Slossie didn't make the final.
I know. And I kind of wanted Jane to win. I like Jane.
I like Jane a lot. I think Candice was basically just guaranteed to win after the first few weeks, though, because she kept winning that Star Baker. Did you see that peacock thing she made?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Wasn't it incredible? I mean, and what's funny, what I like about it though, is that like a couple of days later, you see like the news reports that pop up, like people trying to make the same things and failing spectacularly.
Yeah.
I mean, there was people, but there was like people on there who couldn't even make meringue, and I'm thinking, you can't make a peacock if you can't make meringue. Don't even try the peacock bit.
No, leave the peacock out. No, but I was horribly disappointed. It was one of those things. I wanted Jane to win, but unfairly they chose him, which is just. I was like, don't do that. I wanted Jane to win. But, in any event, what struck me as well about the article, I think Banville's getting on a bit now. Did you see the photo that accompanied the article? He must be pushing 70 now, and he's got those sort of, I'm a bit pouchy myself, but he's got those sort of cheek pouches going on. He sort of looked he looked like a distinguished hamster. That's sort of any old hamster, a very distinguished.
A distinguished hamster. That's on his next book cover. That
slightly pissed off looking distinguished hamster.
In quotation marks, a distinguished hamster. Steve Cavanagh.
He could be like if he could be a good arch nemesis for Inspector Mallard.
Do you think this is like his first case? I tell you what, is that because like you're talking about John Banville getting on. If he suddenly dies now, you're in the frame.
I'm in the frame?
Yeah, you kind of. I mean, like I think you as a defense lawyer would probably pick apart all the holes in this account. But bear with me. But if you're talking about it, you're already planting the seed. That he's not looking well. He's getting on a bit now, and he's got cheek pouches, and he looks like a distinguished hamster. Is that if he suddenly something happened to him? Now, I'm not saying that something will happen to him, and I hope he lives a long and productive life, which he has already. Really, to be fair, he is. Like,
he gets enough oxygen anyway.
Yeah, maybe that's the problem. Is that he's getting too much. But if he suddenly drops dead now. I mean, that could. I mean, this is what we should be asking for is fan fiction of Inspector Mallard investigating things. Maybe John Banville's death is the first one.
It could. Well, yeah. I mean, it could be. Well, we should probably explain this for anyone who hasn't listened to episode 1.
Yes.
Inspector Mallard is Luca Veste's effort to conquer USA. So
it's not just that. It's me being ahead of the zeitgeist. It's me being ahead of the game. Sorry. I'm looking at where the puck is going, not where the puck has been.
Exactly. It's duck detective fiction.
Yes.
Starring Inspector Mallard.
But what I've been thinking about this though is that if we're going to have him in John Banville's world, does that mean that Inspector Mallard, is he a duck detecting in the human world, or is he a duck that's detecting in the animal world?
You could have a bit of both, because obviously if he's a duck detective in the real world, then there would have to be animal villains,
like a shifty
as
squirrel.
well. Yeah, Professor John Hamsterville. He could be like an arch villain who fakes his own death. and Mallard's called to the scene of the crime.
People like, he's here. we called in our best. We called in our best. Has he really called in that duck? Yeah, he has. You haven't seen him work. And he's got two guys up the other side going, "Did you bring the bread? Did you bring the bread?" It's your week. It's your week. But I just imagine, like, you've got to then take it to the next level where you have Inspector Mallard going back to his little duck house on the island in the middle of the pond.
Oh yes, for the quiet, thoughtful.
Yeah, quiet, thoughtful moment. He's twice divorced. He doesn't get to speak to his kids that often, and like when he tries to ring his daughter, who's now like 19 and has been going out and getting into trouble, she hangs up on him, and he finds solace in the bottom of a glass of whatever ducks drink. What do ducks drink? Water. It's just.
It's either water or Glenlivet.
Inspector
Famous
Mallard.
Grace. Famous Grace.
Famous Grace.
Ducks drink Famous Grace.
That's exactly what they drink.
Of course.
And he's got like noisy neighbours because he's living in the wrong side of the island. He's like it's the only place he can afford after he gambled away all his money. He had a really bad case involving a swan, and he just can't get over it.
All right, well, we have to get people.
Yeah, so
I'm not going to write this. Somebody else is going to have to write it.
I can't write it because I've got books that actually make me money to write. Although I don't know at this point. Inspector Mallard is sounding like a really good idea.
It'd be huge, because there's books about dogs investigating, air crashes and stuff in America. There's a whole genre of.
I wonder if you could do it seriously, though. Could you seriously pour out an Inspector Mallard book as crime fiction, just as a serious? No one mentions it beforehand. It just says on the back, Inspector Mallard investigates the murder of so and so of John Banville. But like, no one would know he was a duck. People would just look at it and go, Mallard, that's a bit of a strange. I'll go with it. I'll go with it. It's a very strange name for a detective, but I'll go with it. And they don't know until like halfway through the book. It's like a big twist. It's like Mallard is a duck. He's an actual duck. And like, I should have known when it said he waddled in. I didn't. The bit with the bread makes sense now.
So it's like literally his feathers were ruffled.
Yes, it's very. But I don't know. But if people, I'll tell you what, it would make my day, and I know it makes Steve's year, if someone wrote fan fiction of Inspector Mallard. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be that long. It could be a few pages, but we'd love to read it. And you can send it to us at the usual mail inbox, which is 2crimewritersandamicrophone@gmail.com. There are no prizes other than that warm feeling you'll get inside, knowing that we'll be pissing our pants laughing because you've written us a story about Inspector Mallard.
Yes, and if it's clean, we might even read it out.
Yes.
We don't want any Inspector Mallard erotica.
No, no. That's what we're going to get now, Steve. That's what we're going to get. There's been dinosaur, and now there's going to be dog. And your Inspector Mallard fanfiction doesn't need to be long either. Please send us something.
You're really going to ask people to write this? Okay.
It's not going to happen. No, if it does, I mean, we haven't got no prizes, but I think if we did, we'd have to find something to send. If we did actually do it. It's that we'd have to rethink our idea about having no prizes is that we'd have to find something if someone spent, more time than is ever needed on Inspector Mallard.
Yeah,
And sent us a story.
we might read portions of it out, and we might give you a prize, something. I'm sure we'll get something we can send somebody.
I've got a stuffed duck. It died in a horrible taxidermy accident. No, I'm sure we'll find something. I don't know what, but we'll find something.
We'll find something. So it has to have a good title. So it has to be like Inspector Mallard and Duck L'Orange or something like that. Something really noirish and cool. Yeah, something to do with ducks. I don't know. We don't care. We may not read it. We may be deleted immediately as spam. So no promises.
Lastly, we have we spoke about this last week, and it was Super Thursday. I'm fascinated by this concept of it being one day where like every publisher kind of releases all the books that they think are going to be the big sellers over the Christmas charts. Now, we spoke last week about Jamie Oliver and his new Christmas Club book. We spoke about Alan Bennett, Alan Partridge, Guy Martin, who we both didn't recall or know anything about, and I think we probably committed libel, probably because we didn't say.
We definitely didn't commit libel. No.
I'll tell you what, if anything happens from this, though, you're going to have to defend not only yourself, but me as well. You do realise this?
Yeah, I do, unfortunately, yes. I'm beginning to realise, so sick again now. We didn't say anything bad. I thought he might have been one of those guys that drank their own urine, but he's not like that at all. He does something with cars, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's a fantastic gentleman altogether. I'm sure he is.
He's not going to believe you now after what you said last week. See, that means that what will happen there is that people who have listened to this one but not last week's, they'll have to go back and listen to last week's.
They'll have to go back and
the
listen to
horrible
last
things you said about Guy Martin last week.
I didn't see horrible about Guy Martin. I just didn't know who he was.
His family, the people he'd only met once, and he was just tearing into them. I thought it was awful. Anyway.
Well, there was that time he was caught with all that duck porn.
He said he was. Can I
just say for legal reasons, Guy Martin is a lovely man and does not like duck or bird or any other kind of stuff like that.
And
he's a very, very straight down the line, homely, very straight shooter sort of a guy. No problems at all there. That was it's all a joke, folks. Especially if Guy Martin's lawyers are listening. It's all just a joke, and he never did anything bad, and he's a lovely man, and we're big fans of Guy Martin. We are now.
Yes. Although there is no smoke without fire. Now you've mentioned duck porn. I mean, it could... I'm just saying. I've heard you say it. I'm hearing people talk about it. I'm just saying. So last week we talked about Jamie Oliver and Phil Collins were supposedly going to be the big sellers over the Christmas charts. But, as with any great tale, there has been a twist in the first week. This is not a great tale, actually, to be honest, because if there was a twist right at the beginning, you just wouldn't carry on reading. Anyway, I'll get to it. It doesn't matter. I got lost in my own kind of thought there. Don't worry about it. But no, there is a twist, because out of nowhere, the biggest seller in the first week of sales for the Super Thursday releases is a book by YouTube superstars, The Sidemen.
Ooh.
You don't know who they are, do you?
No idea.
No, good.
No idea whatsoever. Maybe I'm not supposed to, though.
No, I think it's one of those things where we're just not supposed to know who these people are and just buy these books for our children who apparently do know who they are. Although, I have done a little bit of research.
Oh.
And it's The Sidemen.
Are they a band?
They're not a band. What they are YouTube gamers who release videos, but they also do pranks, and a few of them live in the same house in London, which I think is, they're just teenagers and early 20s. I think these guys are. So I think they're incredibly bright because they've decided to share a rented accommodation in London is a really good thing to do because the prices down there are terrible. So they're thinking ahead. So
exactly.
So they have, according to the bookseller, which I think get their data from the Nielsen Bookstand, they've sold over 25,000 copies.
Ooh.
Think about that. They came in third in the overall chart. Do you want to know who number 1 and 2 were?
No, go ahead.
It was The Girl on the Train.
Yes.
And The Girl on the Train.
What?
Yes.
Oh God, the movie tie-in.
Yes. I find this incredible. Is that they have 2 different versions of the same book, and they both sold enough to get to number 1 and 2. This isn't the first week this has happened either. This has happened a couple of weeks in a row now, where they're both books are getting to number 1 and 2. One version sold 30-odd thousand copies. One sold over 28,000 copies. Number 4 is a very good friend, although I've never met him. Never met him. I just know he's a really nice guy, and that's Peter James with Love You Dead.
Oh yeah, lovely man, and yep, super writer.
And in 5th place, I'm not going to go through the whole top 10, by the way. This is not going to become the top 40. Mainly because I know what happens to DJs and these types of things. Is like,
Operation U-Tree.
Yes, I'm not getting involved in that.
All that pornography. Get rid of it. Get rid of it now.
Those damn ducks. No, number 5 was a book that we mentioned last week, and that was Betrayal by Martina Cole.
Oh, fantastic.
Over 17,000 copies of her book. But
it's very
interesting. I was reading in The Guardian that 219 new books were published on Super Thursday. 219.
Wow.
Isn't that
That's
incredible?
Amazing. It's incredible.
And when the first week that we read the article from The Guardian that we spoke about last week, I mean, the Sidemen weren't even mentioned in that, and they've come from nowhere, seemingly.
I have indeed, and they comment or they post videos of them playing video games.
Yeah, so what they do is that I think that FIFA is one of the ones that they play. So they'll play FIFA. I think they've got funny commentary alongside it, but they'll do silly things along with it, and they'll try tricks and stuff. I don't know. Yeah, so I think they play like FIFA and they play Call of Duty probably as well. I don't know. I'm just naming games that I've heard of. But they also do videos with pranks and stuff like that. And what they do is they film it, and then people. Well, I say people. I don't know many of a certain age who would watch these videos, but there is a lot of kids who will watch people playing these games rather than playing the games themselves. I know this because my daughters, who both own Minecraft, have watched more of other people playing Minecraft than they have played Minecraft themselves.
I can't get over that. It's weird.
I don't understand it.
I remember being a kid and having like an Atari, and I had a ColecoVision before that. Shows you how old I am. And playing in my mate's house, and a lot of the games were like one-player games. So you'd have to wait and watch your mate playing a game until it was your turn, and you'd be willing them to die. Like, not really die, like just die in the game.
Oh, well,
so you get your turn. But yeah, I can understand watching. But well, it's obviously not targeted at us. So fair play to this side, man. It's obviously doing fantastically well. So fair play to them. That's great.
I don't know what's in the book. I mean, because the book is very different. I mean, like, how are they gonna? How does that What is in the book?
I don't know. There's all these YouTube people who are all very successful, and they write books about themselves, and it's just a fan thing.
Maybe it's just pictures of them playing the games, and they thought, hang on a minute, people are willing to sit there and watch YouTube videos of them. How many suckers can we get to just look at pictures of us playing the games?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know who they are the word until about 10 minutes ago when you brought it up, so I don't know what's in the book. But I'm sure that's great. That's glad. I'm glad. Tell me this on Super Thursday. We were talking last week about the Danish concept of hygge. Which is it's not written as hygge. It's spelled Hygge. Hidgy.
Hidgy.
But it's called properly pronounced hookah. Are there any hookah books that have done well?
Right, I'm looking at the top 50 now. I'm sorry to say, there's nothing here.
All right.
No.
Well, it's for anyone who didn't listen last week, and why not go and listen to the first episode one. But it's the Danish term or concept for being cozy and relaxed and putting your feet up in front of the fire and having a beer.
There's no actual direct translation, is there, of the word into English?
No. Although it might translate as we can make lots of money from these people.
It's not working so far. I mean, I'll check again next week, but at the moment, it's not lighting up the charts.
No, well, it might do.
I don't know. No one can pronounce it anyway, so.
Well, yes, yes, this is potentially one of the difficulties, but well, I'm sure that I hope they do well, because if you can get away with something like that, that's fantastic. It reminds me of the time, I think Ian showing my age, when bottled water sort of first became advertised on TV. I can remember looking at my dad's face and the just look of total shock and horror. It's like, have these people not got taps in their house? Why would you buy bottled water? He thought it was one of the greatest cons ever. So the concept of hookah, it just seems a wee bit, it's like crack, but Irish people just aren't economized or enough to do. We'll bottle crack and sell it. Not that kind of crack.
I found the little book of Hoog.
Oh,
it's number 15 in the hardback non-fiction chart.
Well, there you go. It's doing great,
and it's sold over 4,000 copies.
Well, that's pretty decent for a book about that. That's great. Very proud of them. I hope they don't do very well.
It's a little book. That's the Super Thursday. I mean, I do find it interesting, this idea that all these books it's like an arbitrary date, isn't it, that they've just chosen to release all their books on, and then they kind of sustain right through to the Christmas period. It's like Jamie Oliver's probably not going to sell many Christmas cookbooks in October.
Yeah, unless people are buying them for Christmas or as Christmas presents and stuff like this, or it's coming up to Christmas, I'll get that. But I'm sure he always does well. Those books always do well.
I mean,
cookbooks at Christmas, great.
These cookbooks are always doing well anyway. One of the biggest sellers this year has been that. I still haven't really even looked into it, but it's Lean in 15. The Joe Wicks one.
Joe Wicks. Yeah, I haven't seen it, and I haven't.
The first one sold over 1 million copies.
Wow. But that's it. Didn't Jamie Oliver do like a half an hour meal?
Yeah.
Thing. He did his TV show
meals or something like that.
15-minute meals. Yeah. Well, that's the key thing. 15 minutes. That must be the magic number in cookery books. You can do everything in 15 minutes. People want it.
I can't even defrost the chicken in 15 minutes. Never mind cook a meal.
I can't even boil an egg in 15 minutes.
Not right, anyway. 15 minutes boiled. Okay. This week in Reviewers Corner, we have Tracy Fenton. Tracy is an avid reader, and she's also the founding member and creator of the book club on Facebook. It has almost 6,500 members, among which 900 are authors. She is going to discuss a couple of books with us now. Hello, Tracy.
Hi guys. Thanks for having me.
It's no problem at all.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
And
Go on. No, I'd say I feel really bad, Luca. I haven't read any of your books yet.
Well, hang on a minute. Who vetted this person?
I bet you read Steve's.
Yeah, but my book is on your list, though. Don't you have some sort of? I'm on some sort of a list.
You
somewhere.
are on my list. You're on my hit list. Yes.
There you go. You see, I knew I'm probably on lots of lists that I don't want to know about, but I'm on your list, so that's cool.
Of course, you're on my list, and I will read your book immediately as soon as this interview is finished.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. We'll see you later. Bye. No, joking. Okay, what's the first book you've got for us this week, Tracy?
The first book I am wanting to talk to you guys about is Her Husband's Lover by Julia Crouch. Now, this is a brand new book. It's actually not even out until next year. I was lucky enough to read it recently. I put it under the psychological thriller genre. It's actually the first book I've read by Julia Crouch, which I feel is really bad, so I need to go and read the rest of her books. It's about, I'm not, without giving anything away, it starts off with a woman called Louisa, who wakes up in a hospital with no memory, and she wants to. Her children and her husband are dead, and they've been killed by her husband, and she's a victim of domestic abuse. And the story is written through several viewpoints, and it's one of those books that you can't stop reading. You have to finish the chapter, and then you have to read the next chapter, because you know something terrible is going to happen, and you want to know what's going to happen. It's 480 pages, and it's deep, and it's dark, and it's very, very disturbing.
Sounds awesome.
It is.
That's
awesome.
Excellent. And that's not out till next January.
That's out next January. I mean, it's just, in my opinion, it's one of the tensest and darkest psychological thrillers I've read. I actually did put in my review that I almost tried to read it with my eyes shut, because it was so disturbing in places. I literally did not put this book down. I took it with me everywhere. I was reading it wherever I went. It was gripping, but it was one of those books that you read with dread, because you know something dreadful is happening. And then about a third of the way through, you kind of guess where this story is going. And then you feel quite sick, which is great, because I personally like books that make you feel sick. But I did also say that the book had so many twists and turns that I actually got whiplash. So I totally recommend this book, and I think it is going to be huge in 2017.
That's excellent. I mean, Julia, I think the one I've read one of Julia's, and that was The Long Fall, and that was superb. So I'm going to be looking out for this one now as well. Her Husband's Lover by Julia Crouch. What's your second book of the week then, Tracy?
Okay, my second book is by the author Michael J. Malone. Now, everyone has been telling me to read Michael's books since I started the book club. And he has a new book out. Well, I say new. It came out, when did it come out? It came out last month, I think, actually. And it's called A Suitable Lie. It's a standalone book. I believe he has got other books in series, but this is a standalone book. And to be honest, the reason I read it is I actually have a cameo part in the book. So I figured I should read it. I didn't know what to expect. I was sent the book. I started to read it. It's basically... the blurb on the book it says, Andy Boyd thinks he's the luckiest man alive. He's widowed with a young child after his wife has died in childbirth, and he's certain he'll never experience love again. Then he meets Anna, who is fun, feisty, and beautiful, and she's his perfect match, and she loves his son like he is her own. But then when Andy ends up in hospital on his wedding night, he receives the first clue that Anna is not all that she seems. So basically, it's, without giving anything away, it's a domestic violence with a twist, because unfortunately, Andy is the victim of the domestic abuse. It's very, very dark as well. I described it as I have described it as a knicker gripping sphincter clencher. It's tense again and very thought-provoking, because a lot of these domestic abuse stories are obviously featuring the woman as the victim, and this is looking at it from the male point of view. It was very uncomfortable, obviously, because of the entire storyline and where it was going, but it was brilliantly written. It was sympathetic, and I just, again, highly recommend it and think it's just a phenomenal book.
I've actually read this one. And I was blown away. I mean, I'm always blown away by Michael's writing, though. I read a number of years ago now, Blood Tears, which was the first, and he did it. I think he did 2 or 3 in the Ray McBain series.
Yes.
They were very different to any kind of, he was a detective, but it's very different to any detective series I'd read in a number of years. But it was always his use of language that I really got on board with. He's almost poetic, isn't he? In a way, the way he writes is very. It's very poetic in my mind.
I think
it was
Michael
beautiful.
is a poet as well. He's written some poetry, and he's certainly performed poetry at Bloody Scotland. But no, we're all big fans of Michael here on the show. And he's a lovely, lovely guy as well. I don't know if you've met him, Tracy, but
yes,
he's a lovely man.
I did. I was very, very lucky enough to meet him a couple of last month at a book signing, and he's charming. He's lovely.
Yeah, he's one of
Which is
my
worrying
favourites.
because which is worrying because in real life he's lovely, but he's obviously got a very twisted mind to write this book.
Yeah, well, all crime writers are like that. That's where we get all of our bad vibes out as into writing, and then we're all really nice people in reality. It is always said that crime writers are the loveliest bunch of people you can meet. It's the romantic writers, the romance
I
writers.
think so. I think.
They're the ones you got to look out for.
Oh yeah. Well, that's yeah, absolutely. Anyone that believes in a happy ending ever after is needs to be head examined anyway. I would have thought.
So that's A Suitable Lie by Michael J. Malone. That's out now.
That's now out now.
And
Yes.
it comes out from Arenda Books, which is run by the lovely Karen Sullivan, one of our favourite people.
And she is wonderful. She is fantastic. The
She's
way what she does
incredible.
for her authors is phenomenal.
It is indeed. So that's the two books for this week. We've got Her Husband's Lover by Julia Crouch and A Suitable Lie by Michael J. Malone. Tracy, before we let you go, we got to talk to you about the book club on Facebook. I keep emphasising the because it's all in block capitals. What was the reason behind the being in block capitals? Is it just so people had to emphasise it?
I think it was a little bit tongue in cheek when I set the group up. I was part of another group which was absolutely huge. It had over 13,000 members, but it didn't have any direction, and it tended to. There was no moderation and there was no control, and I decided to set up a very small group for elite readers like myself who are passionate about books. And I thought, well, we are the book club, and that is what I'm going to call it. So that is where we came, the book. So my little group that started off with 20, overnight, when word got out that I had left this other group and founded this one, became 550 overnight. We were then thinking of capping membership, but then I thought, you know what, let's just see what happens. And then I got I started to stalk a lot of the authors that I loved, because they're all on Facebook. And I asked them if they would join my group, telling them that we only had 600 members and would they join, and they all joined. All of the authors that I loved and read books, they all joined, and the next thing I know, we've just celebrated our 2nd year anniversary. We've got, just as you said, 6,500 members. 900 of them are authors. We have publishers involved. We have editors involved, copywriters, agents, everything. Every person that works in the publishing industry somehow is involved in the group, and it's lovely. And we are there purely to tell everyone about wonderful books and to try and encourage as many readers as possible to leave reviews on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever, and just spread the word. And that is our main mantra, is to read, recommend and review, and that's what we try and do.
I might have to edit in some applause there, I think.
Although I think you should probably just emphasize, when you said you were stalking authors, that you meant online, right? You're not like, you're not hiding outside Mark Edwards' house.
To be perfectly honest, initially it did start online. And I would just go on to, I don't know, Mark Billingham or whoever's Facebook page and see who they were friendly with and then stalk them. It was really easy, actually. It was quite scary how easy it was. But then I started finding out that you guys did things like Harrogate and Goldsborough Books, and realised that I could actually stalk you in real life. And that was even more fun. So that became my hobby this year, was to go around and get as many photographs of myself with authors. And I think I'm up to about 160 now.
Wow.
Which is great. So yeah, that's my, so if you see me coming, run. Run. But yeah, it's great because I guess as an author, you are, it's quite a lonely life and then we just love, all of us, all the members, all the readers we just want to talk to you guys and tell you how wonderful you are and how much you've changed our lives. And it's lovely. And I think it's nice that the book club is a very safe environment for the readers to be in contact with the authors and feel that they can explain to them about the books. Nobody is disrespectful. We don't have any unnecessary or nasty stuff. It's all and I think that's really important that we've got that platform there for everyone.
I agree. Absolutely. I think it's brilliant. It's a brilliant group. I'm Massively proud to be a part of it. You know, it is an amazing place for authors,
It's
readers especially, to get
it's as I
involved
said,
in.
it's safe and it's fun, but and everyone has a very wicked sense of humour, and it
Yes.
does tend to go off in strange directions, and sometimes it is slightly inappropriate, but in a good humoured way. We're just currently at the moment doing or I'm trying to put together a calendar for the authors they are posing for me with their books in their underwear, and we're raising money because every year the book club goes behind a particular charity, and we do a big book charity auction. This year we raised £10,000 for cancer research, and we have chosen our new charity for 2017 is autism. So we're going to be raising money during the month of April, which is Autism Awareness Month. We're going to be doing a book auction, but we're also going to be raising money. We're selling this calendar, and so far I can't begin to tell you how many. My internet provider has almost shut me down because of the photos I'm being sent of these authors standing in their pants, holding their latest book up. But it's all good fun, and I think that they just want to help, and it's a big family. It's just a wonderful family.
Yeah.
It's a lovely environment.
I was involved in the auction last year. I think her name was Emma Palmer, who won the character name in my book.
Yes.
And that was great. I was really appreciative of that because was it cancer last year?
It was cancer research last year, or this year, for 2016. Yeah, and we raised £10,000, and people got their names put in books, and it was lovely, and it was a great. Everybody came together, and we had over 200 authors who gave books towards this charity auction, and it was just lovely.
It's superb. Now, how can people become a part of the book club on Facebook?
Well, cleverly enough, I set the book club up as a secret group on Facebook, which means you can't actually find us. You actually would need an invitation to join, or you need a friend who is a member who can add you. We have a Facebook page called The Book Club, so you can find us on that, and you can send us a message on there, and that will tell you how to join. Or you can send a friend request to Charlie Fenton, same surname but no relation, and he is in charge of all the membership, and he will add you, and it's as simple as that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being with us this week, Tracy. We'll
My
speak to
pleasure.
you soon.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Bye.
Okay, bye.
This week we are in conversation with the amazing Stuart Neville. Stuart Neville is the author of 7 books. He started with the 12, which was called The Ghosts of Belfast in the US. He's also written Stolen Souls, Collusion, and The Final Silence, and the Jack Lennon investigation series. He's also the author of Ratlines, and then we have the DCI Serena Flanagan series, which is into 2 books now. The first of those, which was a Richard and Judy pick, Those We Left Behind. Very welcome, Stuart. How are you, sir?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Excellent. We're all good here, aren't we, Steve?
You are indeed.
We got to talk first about the music that you provided for the podcast. Now, I've already said in the first episode that I was very, very annoyed the fact that you had all these multi talents going on. Is this something that you just like to do as a hobby now, or is it something that you really want to get back into doing? Is it creating more music?
Do you know, it kind of makes me sad to say it, but I do have to describe it as a hobby now, though if you'd suggested the word hobby to me 15 years ago, I would have had you by the throat. It was, I studied music at college, and it was my life plan to be a professional musician, and I had tried for a number of years to get into writing music for film and TV, and so I did do a little bit of work in that field, but it's a horrible business, to be honest. It's hard to get in. When you do get in, it's very hard to get treated with any kind of decency, to be honest. So I simply didn't have the mettle to stick with it, but I still had sort of harbored dreams of being a musician as time went on, but the book thing happened instead, so I'll happily take that.
So music was your first love?
It was, yeah. I mean, in terms of my life plan, when I was very young, a child, I decided I wanted to be a writer. And then I think I reached puberty, and discovered girls and guitars and being in bands. So my life plan changed. Then I had this very definite plan from about the age of 18 to about 35 to be a rock star. And at 35, I figured I'd be too old for that then, and so I'd become a writer at that point. So things kind of worked out that way, except the rock star bit. So I missed this a bit with all the touring and the groupies and so on in the middle, but I still wound up being a writer. So I kind of in the similar way that I write my books, I had a point of departure and a point of destination, but the middle kind of went astray somewhere.
I mean, the thing is that with any kind of like talent, with like music talent, I always imagine that it's all kind of interrelated with writing and that kind of thing. Is like it's all performance art, really, isn't it?
I think there, as we've all three of us have seen at the likes of the Crime at the Coup at Bloody Scotland, there's an unusually high number of writers happen to be musicians as well, and including you, Luca, as I've seen with your beautiful rendition of "Whoops, I Did It Again." And I think it was
no, maybe one more time. Let's get it right.
Maybe one more. I do apologise.
Well, do you know how embarrassing that was? Is watching you get up with Michael Weston King from My Darling Clementine and play the harmonica in the ridiculous way. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I'm thinking, I got up and did Britney Spears. There's no comparison.
I would say you stole the show, though. I would say
only down to the fact that I did Britney Spears.
But I'm still waiting for Steve to reveal his latent talent. It's going to be like juggling or mime or something like that.
I have hidden talent, many hidden talents, and they will all remain hidden. The secret life is a mime artist. And I'm a gorilla mime artist. I just appear in the street and do a bit of mime and then disappear into the night.
I thought you meant gorilla as in the ape sense.
No.
You're like a mime artist in a gorilla. You're a ninja mime artist.
Getting back to the question of it, I think there's a surprising number of writers, and I can think like Stephen King and people like that, who are also musicians. But I think it comes from a similar part of your psyche, and there's I firmly believe there's for anybody who performs in public, I think this goes for actors and musicians, comedians, and also for writers. There's a need to seek approval. Kind of drives you to do this, and most writers also, and this is the contradiction, most writers are also quite introverted people, and they're quite happy in their own company. So it takes quite a leap of faith to write something or create something and then put it out in front of people. Yeah, so I think writers are kind of a strange balance of shyness and having egos in need of massage as well. I think.
I think it's true. It's because it's like it's one of the most personal things you can put out there is a book, because it is all stuff that's come out of your own imagination, and then you're putting it out in front of people and saying like judge it, judge what I've created, and then hoping that it's a good thing. I think that's the case with if you write a song or you paint a picture. It's all kind of interlinked. It's all kind of interconnected. It's all very much the same type of thing. It's all about presenting a part of yourself to people and saying, please don't hate me for it. It's when you start like digging into it, it's quite weird psychologically that we are prepared to do this. We're prepared to give away a part of ourselves every time we do it and say, please don't hate us because of this. But it is also very much linked to that kind of performance type of, you want to entertain, you want to make people, notice you in a way. And I think music is another way of that, especially. I mean, what I loved about the intro that you've done for us is that it has so many different, like, kind of take. It's like, I think you picture to us as like, it's like the shadows with an edge. But I also kind of got like a Tarantino-esque vibe from it. It's very Pulp Fiction-y as well. I mean, is that something that you had in mind before, or was it something that you just came up on a day?
Do you know, it's purely by coincidence. It was the night before you guys emailed me about this. I was sitting messing about I have a Fender Strat that I bought not that long ago, and I just came up with this little riff one night with this kind of echoey lead sound it's like ding 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 thing. And I kind of sort of filed it away, and just so happened to got the email the next day, and I've got just the thing. So I don't know. That's just a bit of universal kind of magic dust floating around that I was put in my head. But it's see, I enjoy messing with sound, different kind of tones and sounds. And I think my downfall as a musician, as a composer, is I sketch out dozens and dozens of ideas, but very rarely actually complete anything. I decided to get back into recording and set up a new home studio there last year. And recording was always my big thing. Between going from sort of 4-track recorders, and I think I had some of the very earliest versions of home digital recording setups and so on. So that was always kind of my thing, but I've always had a problem having like 101 ideas sketched out, but never actually seeing anything through to completion. I guess that's probably one of the biggest contrasts between what I do with music and what I do with books, is that I kind of shocked myself the first time I actually wrote a complete book, because the level of commitment that takes is way, way far and above what it takes to write 3 minutes of music. But part of the pleasure, part of the reason I sort of jumped to do this when you asked me, is it kind of gives me an excuse to actually spend the time and finish the piece of music.
Yeah.
There's a reason to do it. Whereas very often if I do sit down to write some music, it'll be like a verse and a chorus of some sort of idea. But I've no real reason to actually spend another 3 or 4 hours finishing the bloody thing, because there's children to look after, there's books to read, there's beer to be drunk, there's all sorts of things to do instead, But why that then translates to me being able to actually sit down for the weeks and months it takes to write a novel, I don't know.
I mean, that's what I'm interested in. Is like, is there, is it a similar process in writing music as it is in writing books, apart from length?
I'd say, writing a piece of music, I'd say it's more akin to writing a short story, in that you've got to make a complete idea that's fairly compact and that you can put together fairly quickly as well. But if my short stories were like my music, I'd have about 1,000 stories that were 3 paragraphs long. So again, I don't know why I can finish one and not the other. In terms of the actual creative process of writing a novel, it's hard to compare that with music, simply because it's an entirely different kind of commitment. In terms of time and scope, and unless you're going to be into writing symphonies or something, I don't think it would be. I don't think it's a good comparison to make. To be honest, it's kind of a different animal.
Yeah, I always get. I think me and Steve have spoken about this before. Is like comparisons to any other kind of thing is very difficult with writing, because it is such a long process to create. I think we've spoken about that before, haven't we, Steve?
Yeah, I think writing a novel, it takes roughly about a year. And it's hard to know whether, I'm sure people writing operas and things like that takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
I suppose, or even artists these days wouldn't write a single song. They're working on an album and all of that. And
well, there's a different kind of aspect of that, though, because very often things like operas or classical music and so on, or somebody's writing a concerto or whatever, they're usually written to commission.
Yeah.
People would very rarely sit down and think, I'm going to write a whole concerto and however many movements. Because why would you? But
exactly.
But if you look at, say, writing music for film, very often a composer has to write an entire score for an entire movie in a matter of weeks.
Yes.
And that includes from the initial composition of the main themes and so on through to arrangements and orchestration, and coming up with all the variations and all the little bits of incidental music, little stings and so on. And they will have a very, very short period of time to pull that together, because they can't do it for a start until the movie's more or less edited.
Yes.
And then the turnaround time between that and the movie getting into theatres or DVD, whatever it's going to go to, or TV, wherever it's going to wind up, you're talking, you might be talking a month, 2 months maybe.
But you've done that before, haven't you? You've scored short film, haven't you?
I scored short films. I scored one feature many, many years ago. It was like a zero budget indie thing. Our guys, a couple of guys from Katie, had basically made an entire action film. I think they made it for about 50p. But it was actually a very fun thing because they just went out with a load of heart and no money and just had a ball. But one of the guys actually, the two brothers, called Andy Hughes and Michael Hughes. The film was called The Limiter. It's actually on IMDb.com if you look it up. And they did a short film with Art O'Hanlon as well. And my biography mentioned that I was once for an Irish comedian, and that was Art O'Hanlon in a film called Flying Saucer Rock and Roll, where Ardle had to pretend to play guitar and I had to do the close-ups of his hands, but I did the music for that. But it was those two brothers, Enda and Michael Hughes. Michael Hughes is one thing is an actor. He acts, his stage name is Michael Colvin. He's in The Fall and he's in Good Vibrations and things like that.
Oh yes.
But he's also just published his debut novel as well.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, literary magical realism kind of thing called Countess Divine. I think it's published by Michael Joseph. So yeah, it's one of those strange journeys people take through life, through different careers, winding up as writers. There does seem to be this strange, you could look at any number of writers and look at their bios, and as often as not, be a list of jobs as long as your arm.
We might Tony Schumacher, who's a fellow Scouse author, who was basically worked as everything you could possibly work as, including selling underpants on a cruise liner in the Bahamas. But if you look at everyone, it seems to be the case that there's so many people. Especially, I think maybe it might be. I don't know if it's because I noticed it more because I'm younger than many of the other writers that I know. But it seems to be kind of like there are very few who start within publishing or get a publishing deal as an early age. So they do have quite an extensive life experience beforehand.
But I think the job requires that.
Yeah, I agree.
I tried my hand at writing really all through my life, from as a child, through my teens and my 20s and so on. And it had tended to be like the music thing, and I'd write a few pages, something, maybe a chapter or something, and think, actually, this is kind of hard work. And set it aside. And I didn't complete a novel, I think, until I was around 35, and I wrote two that will never, ever, ever be published, will never see the light of day, because frankly, they're rubbish. But I think it took me till I was that age to have the maturity to actually be able to write a novel in the first place. And even then, I still took writing a couple of books that needed to be thrown away to kind of figure out how to do it.
Well, I know as soon as you've said something, I think that's absolutely true. But then I always think, well, hang on, there is always a little exception that proves the rule. There's a guy called Roger Hobbs.
Oh, yes.
Who wrote his debut novel when he was in Reed College in America, The Ghost Man, which I think you probably share some representation there with Roger, Stuart.
Yeah.
But he's it's a fantastic book. But I think he sort of played into his strengths because his main character, the Ghost Man, is a guy who takes on other people's identities and sort of changes his identity in order to disappear. And, when you're 21 or 22, you've no idea who you are. You have no clue how anything works. You have no idea how you work or the world works or anything. But I think he sort of used that to his advantage in that he fed that into his character, who was a character who was sort of lost because he had taken on so many identities. He didn't really know who he was. So sometimes it can happen. They can have prodigies and things, but I think Mr. Hobbs is probably a man who's mature before his time. If you ever see a picture of him, he's always wearing a suit.
Yeah,
and I think that's a very mature young man.
I know Roger. We as you alluded to, we have the same literary agent, Nat Sobel, and actually Nat and Judith, Nat's partner, and Roger and I all had breakfast together in New Orleans.
Oh, did you? Very good.
At the BridgeCon Festival there. And, when you meet Roger, you kind of realize he's kind of operating on a somewhat higher level than most of us. He's just one of those guys that's got a sort of an intellect that's kind of a step up. And his big thing is actually gambling. He makes a lot of his living from gambling because he knows how to work the systems.
Wow.
He's just got one of those minds that can do that.
Amazing.
Wow.
But, very interesting guy. Very interesting writer as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we're going to ask you about your alter ego.
Yes.
Shall I read out the press release that went out? I think it was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which kind of announced it. So this is from the bookseller. and it's regarding the UK, right? So let's say it's Harville Secker has acquired the heart-stopping standalone psychological thriller Here and Gone by Haylen Beck. The book, said to appeal to fans of Paula Hawkins and Gillian Flynn, is said to be Vintage's lead thriller next year and will publish in April 2017. And its rights were preempted by Crown in a US deal, and it's also going to be published in several international territories following high-octane auctions. I always like the phrasing of these auctions. You know, the description of them is always interesting.
It's always like you imagine people on the phone going, buy, buy, buy.
When in reality, it's a few emails for But that's going to be in Germany, France, Israel, and the Czech Republic. Film rights have already been optioned by Meridian Entertainment, with an adaptation to be co-produced by James Schamus, the writer of Brokeback Mountain and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And the book is said to mark a thrilling new direction for Stuart Neville, for whom Haylen Beck is a pseudonym for novels inspired by his love of American crime writing. So, Stuart, Haylen Beck first. Why not Hendrik Santana?
I had a worse one. I thought it's your two favorite guitarists, isn't it?
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen and Jeff Beck.
You could have been really unlucky. What if it was Slash and Mark Knopfler? That could have been really, really unfortunate.
So my second choice was Angus Clapton.
Sorry, man.
No, I mean, I went over and over that for quite some time, and whether or not even to use the pen name, that was quite a involved and active discussion between various people as well. But yeah, I mean, the pen name, the reason for it was simply because the book is such a departure from what I'd been doing, and it was particularly in light of the books under my own name, particularly the Serena Flanagan books, that kind of had a bit of a breakthrough this year with the Richard and Judy promotion and so on. And it seemed, particularly after Harville Secker and Vintage put so much work into establishing a brand with the new covers and so on, that for me then to take a left turn would be counterproductive under my own name. Yeah. But keeping it as a pen name seemed the more logical thing to do, and treat it as a new product, a new brand, as it were.
Do you think, because there's been a lot of talk recently about the fact that debut thrillers seem to be breaking through quite often. I mean, are they going to try and brand Haylen Beck as a debut thriller? I mean, is that going to be, is it going to be treated as such, do you think?
Yes and no. In terms of how it's marketed to the public, I think it will be treated as a debut. And it kind of is a debut. I mean, it feels like a debut for me because it is kind of a different identity, a different kind of story.
It does. It really feels like that from the description of the book. It sounds like a real different type of story to the one that you're kind of known for before.
Yeah, and it's but I think within the trade, it's going to be acknowledged that it's me. And I think in the book itself, it'll sort of briefly give my name in the bio. So it's not going to be done like a J.K. Rowling, Robert Galbraith kind of secret to be revealed 2 books long kind of thing. Not that I would care if it was me, but it's going to be like an open secret kind of thing, and it's and it will be treated as a debut. I mean, we're going to be have scribbles about it. It's not going to be entered into the debut categories of any awards, anything like that. We're not going to try and pull any fly ones that way, but as a brand, if you like, it'll be treated as a debut.
It's really amazing to watch though, is that after 7 books, it's like, this kind of breakthrough can still happen. Is that you can kind of build up a brand as one name, and that you can still take a departure and work on something else, and publishers will go along with it. It's like, they haven't said like, well, why have you written that for? We just want another, X book that you've already written. That did well with Richard and Judy, so we just want another one of those. They've kind of, they have gone along on this journey with you and said, no, we really like it. And they've actually, I think there's a quote here from Jeff Mulligan. Is that your editor? Is that at Vintage?
At Vintage. Jeff's been my editor from the very start.
And he says, I've never read an opening chapter that had me so gripped and desperate to race to the finish. Within hours, I had an unprecedented response from fervent colleagues, buzzing with excitement. we are certain that Here and Gone is set to become a word-of-mouth sensation with readers. I mean, that kind of support from a long-term editor, I think that's something that we all kind of hope that we would get from if we kind of broke away from a series. I know Steve and I both write series characters, and also in future we'll probably want to write something outside of the series. That's the kind of support you want from your editor, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, the approach I took was to actually just write the book. And my agent knew about it, but we didn't tell any of the publishers about it. But because I had faith in the idea myself, and kind of the way we writers do tend to be kind of blindly optimistic when they start writing a book that's going to be the best thing they've ever done in the whole world ever, until you get about a third of the way, and then you realize actually maybe it's not. But it's starting the book with that kind of optimism. We didn't tell the publishers because we knew if I'd sort of gone to them beforehand, said, "Here, I've got this idea," and tried to pitch it, particularly with what they've been doing with Richard and Judy and so on, they would probably quite rightly have said, "Here, no, hang on, stick to the path you're on here. That's what we're working on." Unless the book kind of spoke for itself once it was done. I knew I was going to have to approach it that way. So the book was written on spec with no contract. And kind of sort of dropped on the publishers as a surprise. And thankfully they were pleasantly surprised by it. And it's kind of worked with them.
Well, I've read the opening of it on the way home from bloody Scotland, and it is fantastic. I mean, it is one of those high concept thrillers that it's a total page turner. It really is fantastic. Actually, tell you what, give us the setup for it. I don't know if we've done the setup for it yet. Give us the pitch of it.
This is actually a tricky one because I'm having this discussion with the publisher at the minute because they're not quite sure how much to say.
Oh, right, okay.
Because it's kind of an early on twist, but I'll lay it out for you anyway because I think it's going to wind up being something like this, but it'll be written better than this when it's actually in print. But the premise is Audrey Kinney goes on the run from New York with her two children, fleeing her ex-husband, her abusive ex-husband, who's been trying to get custody of the children. So she goes on the lam and driving across country, an old station wagon, and driving across Arizona in the desert, is pulled over by a small town sheriff who arrests her then on a trumped up charge. A deputy is called to come and take the children to a safe place. And she's taken back to the sheriff's station, fingerprinted, process, all that stuff. And all the time she keeps asking, where are my kids? Where are my kids? Are they all right? Where are my children? So eventually she winds up in a cell. And she asks the sheriff one more time, where are my children? And his reply is, what children?
Oh. It's fabulous.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, so it's
oh, that's very, very good. I like that already.
It's really good. It's one of those fantastic hooks, that you would see in the likes of a really good Harlan Coben or Linwood Barkley. One of those amazing hooks, and it is genuinely authentically American.
Well, that's what I strive for. And the book got written kind of because of a kind of confluence of circumstances. Was that I'd had the idea kicking around for a year or more before I actually sat down to write it, and I've been kind of itching to start. Sometimes you have an idea, and you filed away with the 101 other ideas that you thought were brilliant at the time, but once you let them percolate a little bit, you kind of figure out which are the good ones and which aren't. But the idea had stuck with me for a year, and I just thought maybe I could just take a couple of months and write this. But it just by coincidence, I knew I'd wanted to set the story in Arizona because I'd spent a bit of time there before. But a guy called John Doherty at Northern Arizona University at Flagstaff, which is in the north of the state, got in touch, and he was doing a course at the university about fiction about conflict, post-conflict fiction and so on. And they were doing The Ghosts of Belfast, the American edition of the 12, as part of their course. And he said, if you're ever in Arizona, can you come and talk to the class? And just so happened, we'd just arranged a date for a reading at the Poison Pen in Scottsdale, in Arizona. And 2 days before that, would you believe Van Halen were playing Phoenix, Arizona?
Oh, it's all coming together. It's all coming together.
There's just kind of sense of things kind of falling into place there. And yes, we got all to work out. So I went to see Van Halen one night. Then John came and picked me up at the hotel the next morning. And we did like a 48-hour road trip from Scottsdale, which is like sort of the low desert of Arizona, up to Flagstaff, which is in the forest of northern Arizona. And we took like a long route there and back. Taking in these sort of huge swathes of forested wilderness, just pine cones out, and it's like altitude of about 7,000 feet. And then down into the desert, where it's just total scrub and prickly pears, and stopping these little roadside stores. There's a moment. There's a store in the opening pages where Audra stopped just to get some water and so on, where the sheriff initially sees her, and that's an actual real store that was by the roadside. And I remember then there's a very similar store I also went to, and walking in and being a cabinet of second-hand pistols behind the counter.
Wow.
That I could, if I'd wanted to, just sort of took out my wallet and bought a Glock or something if it felt like it. All these little details started appearing in the book. All sorts of details from the trip itself. There's a moment that involves a dry lake bed with a bald eagle flying over it, which actually happened. I stood by a dry lake bed and saw a bald eagle flying over the lake. So these little moments wound up being kind of peppered through the book.
I'll have a Coke and a Glock, please.
That's the actual line. I think that's almost in the order kind of thinks that. But I do think, I know, Steve, you've taken a different approach to this, but I kind of felt for me to write that book, I had to go and travel through that country.
Yes.
But you're writing about New York, and New York is kind of a different case, because I think most people, the first time they go to New York, they feel like they've been there before.
Well, yes, but I also cheated. I didn't. Well, Eddie Flynn, my first book, I couldn't, in all conscience, say to my wife, "I've never done this before. I'm going to write a novel. In order to research it, I have to go to New York." Bye. Like that. There's no way that would have. Everyone would have thought I was absolutely crazy. But I cheated by sending it in New York, in that everyone has an immediate, bright, clear, and vivid picture in their minds of what New York is already.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to go into great detail describing it. It was sort of saying, right, it's in New York, right? Okay, thanks. Let's get on with the story.
Big buildings.
Yeah, big buildings. You don't even tell you this. It's New York City.
There's loads of stuff going on. You know it.
So,
you know the score.
And at the first few books, I have been since.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. So what you're really saying, Stuart, is you have lots more road trips that you have to take in the US for research. Is that right?
Well, yeah. No, I try to tie things in. The second Haylen Beck book is going to be set in New York. But again, I'll be using parts of the city that I know.
Right.
And it'll be these little side streets and so on that I'm familiar with. It'll be in it. It'll be largely set around the area around Union Square. It just so happens my agent's office is quite close there, and as is my American publisher's office, so it kind of have reasons to be there. But I'm actually thinking Steve and I are both recently returned from a trip to the aforementioned New Orleans, so I have a firm idea for a third book, which I think may well wind up being set there.
Ooh.
But it's yeah, I do feel, for me, if I can go to a place and look around, get kind of a sense of it.
Yeah. I think that really helps. Definitely helps.
But also, Google Maps helps an awful lot as well.
It does.
I've just realised.
Then you can't get the smell.
I've just realised how ridiculous I have been, because, I could have been setting my books anywhere, and I chose down the road. It's like, it's in Liverpool. It's just like, I could have been set in New York, Arizona, all these places I could have been to, and I just decided to set it in bloody Liverpool, where I go every day. Stuart, the thing is that it is, because there's, a lot of books in the series that you've done before with the shoot. Now, is it not? I suppose it's not going to be the case where you're worried about writing another one under the Haylen Beck name. You've kind of done it before, so it's not going to be the kind of situation where it's, if the first one does really, really well, which I'm sure it will, you're not going to be too worried about what's going to happen next. Or is it going to be a case of I've got to kind of follow that up now, or are you worried about that at all?
Well, I'm hoping to have the second book written before the first one comes out.
See, I always think that's the best way to go. I never understood, the idea that, because I think we're still waiting on Paula Hawkins, for example, hasn't had a second book out since Get on the Train. Although her first one is still selling in ridiculous numbers anyway.
Yeah.
But I think S.J. Watson was another one where there was a fair few years between his first two books. I always get the feeling that you should have one ready to go. You know, it's like so you don't get
Well, I
kind
think
of stuck in there.
I don't think they were sort of sitting around. I'm sure they were trying to do another one, but just sometimes these things take time.
I think the pressure must be incredible, though.
Must be incredible.
What I have found with this book, if I can talk sort of behind the scenes trade kind of stuff, is that there's been very much a sense of a machine kicking in with this book. I mean, my publishers, this book's coming out with Crown in the US, and my Stuart Neville book's come out with Soho Press, and I hope will continue to. And both Harvest Sector, my previous books, and Soho in the US have been very, very supportive, and you know, Soho have always gone the extra mile for me. But there is a sense of things having kicked up a gear with this book, and having the talk and the buzz coming back from the publisher. It's quite different. But I would imagine this is what it's like for me when there's been books that people they know are going to be surefire hits. There's a sense of things kind of taking over, you know, of you've possibly lost that bit of freedom that you had to write, because all of a sudden you're taking care of this thing that's going to go out into the world, and it's taking a lot more attention than the average sort of destined for the middlest novel can be. Which, you know, in fairness, that's pretty much where I've been sitting through most of my career. I mean, that's where most of us writers are. But yeah, there's a sense of something different happening this time, and I could see for the likes of, I'm sure it was much more intense for the likes of S.J. Watson.
Yeah,
that's one that those. Yes, I can see why maybe thoughts of a second book can take a backseat to actually tending to the thing that you're trying to sell now.
I mean,
Exactly.
he was one of the first wave of those kind of books that kind of, you know, took on a life of its own. He was one of the first in that, you know, there was him, Gillian Flynn, Paula Hawkins, and I think Claire McIntosh would probably be last year's as well. You know, it was first in that series of big, massive books that sold ridiculous amounts. And it wasn't really known before that, other than, like, you know, you got the J.K. Rowling would always sell millions, but it's more of a new phenomenon, isn't it? This now seems to be the slot in January, doesn't it, where it seems to be what's next kind of thing. And I think it probably does put a lot of pressure on them, so I'm happy to know that you've already, but I have no doubt that you would have had something in reserve anyway, but it's good to hear that you've actually got something ready to go anyway.
Well, I didn't say I had it ready to go, so I'm planning to have it ready to go. That's a very different.
No, let's go with my version. It sounds much better. Well, that will be out in April, apparently. I think it was. April, was it?
April in the UK and June in the US.
Okay, and you've got So Say the Fallen as the latest one under the Stuart Neville name, as we'll now say. And that was out in hardback earlier this year, and it's out in paperback the 9th of March, I believe.
I believe so, yeah.
And it's out on Kindle now as already. Thanks very much for joining us, Stuart. Can't wait to read the new Haylen Beck novel, and I'll continue to read everything you write under your own name as well. Thanks very much, Stuart.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Stuart. Bye, man.
Well, that just about wraps it up for this week on Two Crime Writers and a Microphone. Just before we go, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been reading at the moment. What have you been reading, Steve?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I finished the latest Michael Connelly, Harry Bosch book, which has got a title I'm very envious of. It's really Chandler-esque. It's called The Wrong Side of Goodbye.
Ooh.
That's a beautiful title.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best things that's happened to me since I've started this writing game is I got to meet Michael Connelly a couple of weeks ago at Cheltenham Festival and interview him. And he is the loveliest guy, very warm, very generous, and full of fantastic stories. It was a real pleasure to spend time with him. And we talked about the book, talked about lots of things, but the book is brilliant. It's one... I think it could be one of his best, I think. Harry Bosch isn't in the LAPD anymore. He starts off as a classic private eye novel where he's investigating. He's been asked by this multi-millionaire to trace the millionaire's bloodline to see if he has a surviving heir. And he gets Harry Bosch in to do this. And at the same time, Harry's also working free for the San Fernando Police Department on like cold cases. So there's like a double helix narrative thing going on with two. He's investigating as sort of what could be a serial rapist, and it's just fantastically well written and touches upon brilliant recurring themes like Vietnam. So Harry Bosch was a tunnel rat in Vietnam, and one of the things that sets the book apart, there's little tiny details in it that you go, that's real, that really happened. Like there's a bit in it where Harry's daughter wants to go out for food, and she wants to go and have Vietnamese food, and Harry won't eat it. And they have a bit of a row, and then Harry sort of says, look, I was a tunnel rat in Nam, and if I ate American food, the Vietnamese would smell me in the tunnel. I had to eat what they ate and stuff like that. And you just go, that, I don't know if that's true or not, but it just, things like that just brings true and makes everything else. So it was brilliant. Go out and get The Wrong Side of Goodbye, because it's fabulous.
I read recently, and it's by a friend. So it was one of those moments where you hope it's good, because if it's not, then you'll never be able to talk about their books to you ever again. But it was Murderabilia by Craig Robertson.
Oh yes.
In fact, to be honest, the amount of rivalry that we have in our friendship, it would have been good if it had been crap. Because then I could have gone, well, it was all right, mate. It was all right. But no, it's fantastic, and it's another in the Detective Inspector Neary and Tony Winter series. I think he's on about book 6 or 7 now in that series. But this one, it opens up. It's one of those openings where you're thinking, where is he going with this? But it opens up on a commuter train in the morning, first commuter train out in the morning from Queen Street Station in Glasgow, and as it emerges from the tunnel from the station, hanging from a bridge is a body, and placed neatly on the ground below the body are the victim's clothes, right, all nicely folded up. Now, as we move forward, we realise that not all the clothes are there. Something is missing, and what this delves into then is the I've heard Craig talk about it. It's like very black market on the web, dark web type of thing, where people will trade in murder cases and what they can find from these cases. So it'd be like, a lot of people who buy things like Charlie Manson's paintings, but like also there'd be like parts of a fireplace from a murder scene. Or there'll be like, things like of that sort where it's very strange, but people do collect these things. So it's like memorabilia, but from a murder. So exactly. It's memorabilia. Wow. But it's a fantastic. Honestly, it's really dark, and it makes you question, society in ways that you don't really want to, and like the people within it, and how, like what kind of. Because this is a real thing, this is all a real thing he's writing about. It's one of the best books in the series, which is saying something, because it's been, as I say, I think it's about book 6 or 7 in the series. It really resonates long after reading. It was a fantastic read. I'll never say it to him to his face.
Well, you'll have to, because we're going to have him on soon.
Oh yeah, we're going to have him on, aren't we? Well, we just won't mention the book. He's already, He's already got. He beats us 13-1, all right, in the football. Scotland beat England 13-1 in the Crime Writers match, and he's held it over me for 3 years. It doesn't matter that we beat them 7-1, because he still thinks that on goal difference he's ahead.
Well, technically he's right, but we can't have Craig on and not talk about the book.
Yeah, I suppose so.
It would be like having Buzz Aldrin on and not talking about going to outer space.
I think Buzz Aldrin would mention it first, to be honest. You can imagine. I always felt really sorry for Buzz, is that he'll always be known as the second person on the moon. It's like I walked on the moon, yeah, but you were second, mate. You weren't first, were you? And I feel terrible for him. It's sad.
I'm sure
Donald Trump would say. It's sad in a big manner.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, well no, that Murderabilia does sound fantastic. So go out and get that, folks.
Yeah. I think that's out in. I think it's the trade paperback version at the moment, and it's also out on Kindle. I think the paperback is out March time. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it's a fantastic read. If you've not read Craig before, you're in for a treat. And once you've read that one, go back to read his first novel, Random, which is still one of my favourite debuts of all time. That was incredible. That's a serial killer novel through the serial killer's eyes. It's very effective. But he's a great writer. Don't tell him though. Don't tell him because he's already got a big head. No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Yeah, so that's my read for this week. So that does it for this week. Steve, I think you're going to give out the information now, aren't you?
Yes, I am indeed. So listen, folks, thanks very much for tuning in. And please do get in contact with us. This is a podcast for readers and writers. So we want you to get in touch if you have questions, if you for us, you queries for us. If you have an Inspector Mallard story, get in touch with us. Our email address is twocrimewritersandamicrophone@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter. Tell us what you thought of the show. We're at Two Crime Writers. And it's Two Crime Writers and a Microphone on Facebook. And what have we got coming up next week? In the next episode?
Next week we have Callie Taylor, who's the author of The Accident and the Lie and the Missing. We'll also be hearing from Tracy Mains, who will give us some interesting reviews of well-known books, I would say.
Yes, I think she is.
But done in a style that may be interesting to a lot of people who listen in, I think.
Yes, I don't know quite what books Tracy's gonna review yet, but we'll find out.
I would hope you do. I mean, you do share some space with her, don't you?
I do, but she doesn't tell me these things.
So that's coming up next week. So from this week, it's goodbye from me, Luca Veste.
And it's ta-ta from me, Steve Cavanagh. And subscribe to the podcast, tell all your friends, keep us going.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Bye now.
Thanks, folks. Bye.